the first video we're going to be doing today, or I'm going to be doing, is fanfiction reading, FIMFICTIon. It's called Nightfall, and I'm not quite sure who it's by yet, but I'll have the link and a description of it in the description, and yes, so be sure to read that. And yeah, sorry if I muck up a little bit because I suck at reading, but couldn't think of anything else to post, so this is what we went for first. Okay, Nightfall. Ponyville looked like a tiny model underneath the clouds. Shadows stretched out away from the rising sun. Ponies were just waking up to get ready for the day ahead, but in the skies a streak of colour was already zigzagging across the sky. Rainbow Dash sliced through the clouds, reducing them to vapour, then slowed down to survey what was left. A few low clouds still hung about over half of the town. She reared up to fly over them when something else sped past her. Something small and orange. She grinned. "Hey, Squirt, don't leave me hanging," Rainbow called. Scootaloo glanced back to see Rainbow Dash flying up behind her. Her wings began to buzz even faster. She wasn't about to let Rainbow beat her. She did a loop in midair, then swooped down to knock out a stray cloud. Rainbow Dash flew beside her. "You're pretty fast for a kid," Rainbow said. "What do you mean, for a kid?" Scootaloo said with a smirk. "I totally passed you back there." "Well, yeah, I was going easy on you." "Oh, really?" Scootaloo took off again, flying in a spiral around the top of the town hall. She swung around the flagpole on top, then slowed down to watch Rainbow Dash catch up to her. The two of them passed at the top of the roof. Rainbow Dash scratched her head. "Okay, you're just fast in general. How about a race?" Scootaloo said. She pointed a hoof towards the only part of town with clouds still hanging over it. "Let's see who can knock out the most of those clouds. And you better not go easy on me. You're on." They took off in two different directions, cutting twisted paths through the sky. Scootaloo lined herself up in front of 4 more clouds and took them out all in one sweep. The wind in her mane and the warmth of the morning sun felt great. Scootaloo watched a few ponies walking on the street below her, stuck down there on the ground while she was having the time of her life up here. She glanced over her shoulder to see how Rainbow Dash was doing. Her jaw dropped when she saw that half the clouds were already gone. But it wasn't over yet. Scootaloo's wings buzzed as she put forth another burst of speed and headed towards another cloud. Scootaloo centered herself in front of the cloud, then sped up to punch through it. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the puff of cold vapor to pass over her. Instead, she felt something heavy coming over her. She flapped her wings harder, trying to fight through it. It finally gave in, but she felt herself falling. "Whoa, kid, you alright?" Rainbow Dash said, diving to meet her. Scootaloo swooped back up and gave a weak smile. "You kidding? That was nothing." She tried to shake off the feeling and headed for the next cloud. It really was nothing, right? As she got closer, she noticed that this cloud wasn't just a fluffy white cumulus like the others. It was a thick, grey storm cloud, even though the weather was scheduled to be all clear today. All the more reason to get rid of it. She gritted her teeth and flew straight into it. Darkness seemed to surround her. Everything went completely black for a moment, and once again she felt a heavy resistance pushing her back. With a final push of effort, she flapped her wings as hard as she could and emerged on the other side. The blue skies had suddenly turned dark. It was nightfall, but the moon and the stars were nowhere to be seen. Worst of all, her wings weren't carrying her weight anymore. She was falling. "Rainbow Dash!" Scootaloo's head whipped around wildly, but she couldn't see anything, just the tangle of branches in the forest that was rapidly approaching from below. She let out a yelp of pain as she hit the branches, hearing the twigs snap as she tumbled through. She tumbled into another limb, and another, and finally hit the forest floor, hard, Legs shaking, Scootaloo picked herself up and looked around. Rainbow Dash? She had no idea where she was. The Everfree Forest, maybe? Where had Rainbow Dash gone? They'd been flying just a few minutes ago. Scootaloo scratched her head, expecting to feel a lump where she'd smacked into a tree branch. It was so hard to see anything in the darkness. She had no idea which way to go. Everything seemed to have gone red. That was the last thing she remembered. That was when she remembered. She hadn't been here since last summer. But there was no mistaking it. These were the woods near the Winsome Falls, the very woods which were said to be haunted by the Headless Horse. The thought made her stop dead in her tracks. Then slowly, she tried to get her bearings. That fall had really knocked her around, but she had a feeling that Ponyville was just down the path. She started walking. Scootaloo was alone, and even the thought of it was kind of creepy. Alone was good. Alone meant that no pony was following her, and she really didn't want to run into any pony out in these woods. That was when she heard the snap of a twig behind her. She stopped to listen, and could hear the rhythmic sound of hoofsteps somewhere in the woods. They sounded like they were behind her. No, in front. Or were they sneaking in from the sides, off the path? The more she listened, the less she could tell. She did the only thing that seemed logical. She started running. No matter how far she went, she couldn't get away from those hoofsteps. And the trees never seemed to end. Everything looked identical, and there was no escape. Unless there was one way to escape. She sped up into a gallop and spread her wings. She was a great flyer. Just a moment ago, she'd been up there punching through clouds with Rainbow Dash. She took a leap forward, spreading her tiny wings wide to catch the wind. This was nothing. She was up in the air for only a moment, till she came crashing to the ground again. Scootaloo gritted her teeth and picked herself up. The hoofsteps behind her, they were definitely behind her now, were getting louder and louder. Scootaloo couldn't find her tongue. Her eyes darted around, searching for a way out. Rainbow Dash? Any pony? There was no escape. The gnarled trees seemed to twist and form a thicket all around her. And the sound of hoofsteps moved in slowly, getting closer and closer. Scootaloo shrunk down and squeezed her eyes closed, waiting for the inevitable. It didn't come. She opened her eyes just a crack, then blinked. The Headless Horse was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Rainbow Dash stood there, staring disinterestedly into the shadowy woods. Rainbow Dash, Scootaloo said. She wiped a tear away and ran over to her. I knew you would. Rainbow Dash pushed her away with one hoof. Seriously, kid? Scootaloo stood up at her. Huh? What's wrong? You mean you're still scared of that corny old ghost story, even after all this time? Rainbow said. Give me a break. I wasn't... Well, maybe I was a little scared. But then you showed up, and... So I'm supposed to false at you all this time. Is that it? Rainbow said. She rolled her eyes. You're too old for this. It's pathetic. I've got better things to do. But you promised. Scootaloo's voice trembled. You said you'd be my big sister. By the time I was your age, I was the fastest in my flight camp. I was the only pony ever to pull off a sonic rainbow. What have you done? Start my fan club? I think you know you're not even in the same league as me. Scootaloo could hardly choke the words out. You were going to teach me. What's the point? You can't even get yourself off the ground. No. Scootaloo shook her head. No, we were just flying together a minute ago. You said I was really good. Rainbow snorted. As if that had ever happened. That's a bit too far-fetched, even for a dream. A dream? Scootaloo said. Now she remembered. It was just like those nightmares she had a few months ago. Somehow, she just hadn't noticed it before. She hadn't had any dreams like this since the camping trip, though because of... Hello again, Scootaloo. Scootaloo jumped when she heard the voice. Though the tone was soft and soothing, she turned around to see a tall figure standing before her, a mane that sparkled in the sky. Princess Luna, she said. The princess smiled at her. It's been some time since we last met. Scootaloo looked over her shoulder at Rainbow Dash, who stood with her back turned, motionless except for an idle flick of the tail. This is just a nightmare, isn't it? Rainbow Dash wouldn't really say that. Do you remember what happened after our last meeting? Luna asked. Well, Scootaloo thought for a moment. I felt a little better after you talked to me, but I was still scared. I ended up running away, but Rainbow Dash found me. She said that she'd be my big sister, and since then, we hang out all the time. It's been great. I've been working on my flying, but she's taken me to Cloudsdale and watched a few new chicks on my scooter. A smile began to spread across her face, but then vanished. She doesn't actually think that I'm, pathetic, does she? Sometimes we doubt even our closest friends, but I believe Rainbow Dash's actions reveal her true feelings. The harsh red light throughout the forest faded to a soft violet, then a deep tranquil blue. The two of them stood alone among the trees. Scootaloo hung her head with a sigh. I thought I was done with these nightmares. I'm so sorry you had to come back here just for this. Luna shook her head. As I told you before, every pony has their fears. We can learn to resist them, but no pony is truly free from fear, she said. However, there is another reason I have to come visit you tonight. What do you mean? Scootaloo said. I fear this was no ordinary nightmare, and you're not the only pony to experience such a dream recently. Huh? Scootaloo tilted her head. I've begun to notice some strange things happening on my nightly journeys. Something is invading the dreams of ponies and prying on their innermost thoughts and fears. It seems you were the target tonight, so this thing was causing my nightmares to come back? Scootaloo shuddered. Thanks for getting rid of it, whatever it was. It will not be so simple, Luna said. Even if your own dreams are safe, it will only move to Somepony new, and it will only become more difficult to find the source. She paused. This is why I am requesting your assistance in the nights to come. Scootaloo froze. You want my help with something? You have shown that you are easily capable of facing your fears. That kind of courage does not come easily, Luna said, and I believe you may have the potential to help the others overcome what they fear the most. Scootaloo wasn't sure what to say. She felt Luna's wing touch her lightly over the shoulder. I realize this is no simple request, but I would not be asking this of you if I believed it was beyond your capabilities, Luna said. But it will be a dangerous task, so the final decision will be up to you. Scootaloo felt a lump in her throat. Willingly throwing herself into nightmares every night seemed like a terrible idea. She'd lost enough sleep on that camping trip just from her own dreams. But on the other hoof, this was a special request from the Princess of Equestria. Special mission that she had been chosen for. That didn't just happen to any pony. It'll be no big deal, Scootaloo said. I won't let you down. Luna gave a small smile. I will give you what I can to help, but there is much to be done. I will be unable to accompany you. Scootaloo took a step back. She was already having second thoughts about the whole thing, and she was about to say something when suddenly Luna raised her head, looking towards the sky beyond the branches. Time is short. The morning comes, but we will meet again soon. The forest was pierced by beams of light. Scootaloo blinked as the sunbeams filtered through her bedroom window across her face. And we're already up to 14 minutes, so this is up to the second chapter. So I'll probably end up doing this in a couple chapters because it's fairly long, 66 pages. Don't really want to read that in one time. So I will read the rest of this in the next episode. I don't know how long it'll be in, but I found that relatively enjoyable. So yeah, so far sounds like a great story. So I haven't actually read this, so yeah. So that's our first episode. I hope you enjoyed it. please give us a like or a dislike or whatever you think is appropriate. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.